Good morning, good evening, everyone. This is Luda Kopikina with GAI Insights. Welcome to Daily AI News Review, where we rate articles essential, important, and optional. Please look at the list of articles that we are going to review at gaiinsights.com/articles. Today, I have full house of our core experts, Paul Baya, Ankaj, Tim Andrews, Adam Rappaport, Berkla in the car, and myself. So let's proceed to the first article. Ankaj, please.
Sure, Luda, just bringing up my screen.
Okay.
Okay, the first one that we have for today comes from Lindy AI, and it talks about Lindy 3.0, your first AI employee.
Very intuitive interface. Fully can create from a prompt. Interesting application. What did you think about this, Tim?
I thought this was interesting, but not earth-shattering. We've seen a lot of AI employee approaches using standard tools and specialized tools. It's a product announcement, so interesting but optional for me. It was interesting that they've structured this more as an employee workforce and given it some operational advances, if you will, that make it a little easier to create these agents. It doesn't talk about managing them, interestingly enough, which I think is going to be an issue over time for these. But, interesting, another everyday miracle, optional for me.
Okay. Adam, what did you think?
Yeah, I was optional as well. I think it is quickly getting to be a crowded space, and when they say your first AI employee, anytime someone tries to be the first at anything, I always shy away a little bit. Mostly what I think about is from an enterprise perspective, like who are they and why am I going to give all my data to them? There are so many solutions coming to market that allow enterprise now to avoid situations like this. So I would probably say it's optional.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I was nosing around about the crowded, non-crowded space because, and trying to figure out what's the real competition. So we've been using Zapier for integration, right? And Zapier has a library that is way bigger than what Lindy can offer. But they're not AI first.
And there's N8N as well, which we use internally.
Right, and there's a whole bunch of other tools.
Orchestration, visual orchestration.
Orchestration, the flow automation. Simple Airtable can do a lot of this flow automation. So what's interesting here is the ease of use and the library of integrations. But yeah, the question is how would they manage it and what's the security stuff is and the like. And there's Manus coming that would certainly do this plus way, way, way more. So yeah. Okay. So Paul, what did you think?
Definitely optional, but I think it is an indicator what the new category is going to be here. So we've seen these kind of agents as be kind of micro task and the individual stuff, and this is kind of going to outsource product position and package as an employee, which I think is really, really interesting for companies because you could see these things becoming more and more specialized. Like, for instance, Adam, I want a AI employee that specializes in Massachusetts law in my company. Yes, I could go build that. It's going to take me forever, and if I think about it as employer outsource things, so I think it's very interesting conceptually, but this particular article is definitely optional.
Okay, going optional on Ankaj, okay?
I was going to go John? Optional. Yeah, Paul, one thing, I don't think that the AI as employee paradigm will in fact hold. I think it's the first instance in how people are going to enter. I think they're going to be a different configuration, whether it's function or task or role or something like that. But I think the general AI employee is not a concept that'll survive.
John, I agree. Yeah, maybe I agree. I think, but conceptually, I think it's easier for people to go with an employee versus going right to, order the cash cycle.
Yeah, so they position themselves in that box. By the way, the investors are Battery Ventures and Menlo Park Ventures. So this is quite a good set of investors. 50 million raised. So good solid backing for them, but optional. Okay, let's proceed.
They might get more of the small medium as well versus the enterprise who are looking to really get the infrastructure around a solution.
That's right. Ankaj, okay, optional?
Yes, Luda, okay with optional, but something that Paul mentioned, they already have specific employee skill set, I would say. So basically, they have what they call indies for competitor research, for knowledge management, for call center. So they have those personas for different agents already built in. This is the third iteration of their product. So I have been using it since their launch. So it does some good work. But this agentic specifically capability still needs to be tested. And to your point, the security concerns will be there.
Okay, but optional, okay.
Yes, Luda.
Okay, great. Optional it is. Let's proceed to the next one. Ankaj, please.
Okay, the next one comes from Manas AI, and they have introduced wide research.
Yes, Adam, just on the heels of the prior discussion.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So Menos, people know, is a very capable agent of its own that can perform fairly complex tasks. And what this is doing is very similar to what Grok 4 does in its heavy mode, which is effectively having fully capable individual agent entities that are all not just performing roles, but having complete agency and autonomy to complete tasks of their own independently, so that you can actually complete all those in parallel as another approach to scaling. So they're not the first to market. It's pretty big news with Manus, which was already such a strong contender in that agent space. I'd say I could go with important, but I expect people that use Manus will get wind of this very quickly, and people who don't perhaps don't necessarily need to be across the development.
But this is not rolled out broadly, right? This is still...
Yeah, it's also only for the pro users for now. And,
yeah, so it is...
So but more just the news of this capability and what that signals in terms of sort of what Grok is already doing, actually, and that sort of new element to scaling in terms of the parallel processing of the agent systems.
Okay. Yeah, what did you think about this, Tim?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really interesting. Manus definitely got our attention when it first came out with its really remarkable capabilities. And, but this is a product announcement. As you said, it's limited availability, looks really interesting. It's not the first, as we said. This is becoming a popular architecture. We'll see how long it lasts. Again, very early days. So I would say really interesting, worth watching, but optional for me.
Okay, John, anything to add? Going optional. I think he has difficulty with the microphone. Paul?
Optional.
Optional. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one comes from Andrew NG and talks about a path for China to surpass the US in AI.
Yeah, an interesting positioning statement from Andrew. Tim, what were your thoughts when you read it?
I think this is interesting but optional for the AI leader. I generally recommend highly reading Andrew. I'm not sure how you say it. Is it Andrew Ning? But he's super smart guy, very deep in the sort of core generative AI machine learning ecosystem, if you will. He's been around for a while. Very, very interesting. I've seen him speak. I've read a lot of his stuff. So I would say definitely interesting reading, but I can't even make it really important because this is one of those dope, like you didn't figure this out yet. We've been talking about this for a year and a half. he says it nicely, and so maybe, I could be arm twisted into important, but the reality is we don't have an AI strategy. We don't have much of any strategy with this administration, and we don't have any antitrust. So we have some real challenges, I think, in this nation as a nation strategically trying to maintain dominance. We have dominance because we have the capital and the infrastructure that got started early and a big lead that we started with, but that lead has evaporated in less than 3 years, and hard to see it not being a follower position over the next few years unless something dramatic happens.
Yeah, what did you think about this, John? Is your mic
He might
working?
still be not getting a good
I go
sound.
for important. I go for important. I think Andrew, is a important voice. I would differ with Tim. I do think that the Trump administration has put forward a strategy. We can decide whether we like it or not, but they basically want to liberalize power. Deregulate, try to get open source, more used. But I think this is important. Again, something our AI leaders should be aware of.
Yeah, from the perspective of being aware, I agree. But I think everybody is already aware, and it's different capabilities between us and China, between US and China that Andrew highlights. So maybe that's worth for that reason. Paul, where were you on this?
Let me make the case for essential. I mean, I think we've got too much overly confidence in our Silicon Valley thing. What I find is most leaders aren't aware of this, who aren't paying attention to this. This is something strategic. I would not want one of our AI leaders to be caught flat-footed and not understand this. I think they kind of hear, oh, OpenAI is doing 12 billion in revenue. They're just kicking their fifth largest, most trafficked site must be just dominating the world, and that's not the case. So I'm arguing with Central because I don't want our AI leaders to be flat-footed in this, and I don't think we've covered it a lot. I think it's been obvious to us, but we've been on these calls for the last 350 times. So,
and
it's a good point.
It's a good point. I can back essential, but I don't know whether if you look for a Chinese government strategy, you would find it, right? This is not specified, and it's driven. What we see now is driven by really open sourcing and of all the things that they're doing. It's competition 101 in China. For the best, right?
Luda, the CCP is on the board of all these companies. They have a clear AI strategy. Their influence in the capital markets is supreme.
So I think it's under, and it's not stated per se. They're driving it, but it is not like stated.
Well, they don't know what they have. Well, they have in terms of their strategy for dominating technologies of the future. AI is in the middle of that, and so that has been stated at that level. And then in terms of how their funding and capital markets and strategies work, they can't. These companies can't make a move without coordinating with the Communist Party. I mean,
yeah, that's true. That is true. That's why I'm saying it's kind of
Yep, it's a complicated
arrangement
for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody back essential.
Luda,
Tim, Adam.
Yeah, I honestly think I could support essential. Honestly, I'd like an article that goes a bit further. Frankly, I think it's a bit naive to say that Chinese is going to surpass the U.S. It absolutely depends on the metrics and some perhaps two of the leading indicators in my book, which is the sheer volume of research that's coming out of China and the amount of power production. Like, I don't know what else you need to know, but we are on completely different orders of magnitude on both of those scales between the two of them, and there's really no competition at this point in my mind. China is very clearly winning that race. I also think it's interesting. Maybe Andrew is a little ill-informed, but he talks about speculating about U.S. continuing to be reliant on TSMC in Taiwan. And TSMC is manufacturing in the US and building manufacturing capabilities in Japan. So there are some things he talks about in here that seem a little more like scare tactic than necessarily painting the full picture. But yeah, it's a immensely important topic, and I could support it.
But one thing I would add, the usual confidence, if not overconfidence, of Valley group think is not representing. Andrew's right in the middle of all this in the Valley. He's not saying, "Oh, we're going to get some VC money and outmaneuver this." He's saying, "Guys, this
is a real threat." And that's something that I feel is obvious, but I think most people would.
Yeah, it's a good point that we are too close to it oftentimes. So,
okay,
I would agree. And again, I think I agree again with Paul that this is a guy who is in the middle of the ecosystem, but is still a pretty good thinker. Doesn't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he can stand back and Okay, essential it is. Let's proceed to the next one.
Okay, the next one comes from AWS, and it's a case study about how handmade.com modernizes product image and description handling with Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Open Search Service.
Yeah, so let me introduce it, and please see what you think. So Handmade has 60,000 products, and this is in the space of selling handmade products, handmade crafts rather. And so there at the this article covers how they modernize the product image and description semi-automatically and made it much more efficient and much more uniform across products. This is an older type of article, focuses on SEO. It doesn't mention the bots looking for products at all. It doesn't really state what the impact was of all of this work other than uniformity and effectiveness. So I rated it as optional. What did you think about this, Ankash?
I was optional as well, Luda, for all the reasons that you mentioned. It's not a very interesting use case, not a lot of figures and facts about the impact as well. So optional for me as well.
Okay. Paul, John, Tim, disagree?
Optional.
No, yeah, I could almost be twisted into important because this is we don't have a category for this. This is like AI leaders pass this on to your developers category because it actually is pretty good for developers. They go right down to giving you snippets of code and everything. And while this use case, as we noted, is not, it's sort of last century's use case, which is SEO, or the last 20 years use case. The overall design pattern, as we like to say, is really quite a good one, which is basically how do I create something that I can search using RAG, vector search, and Elasticsearch, which is a very common use case across lots and lots of categories. So for your development staff, this is a really good article. So, but we don't really have a category for that, so I'm okay with optional.
Okay. John, Paul, any disagreement?
No.
Optional. Okay, optional it is. Let's proceed, Ankash, to the next one.
Okay, the next one is a research paper which talks about ReGAN, node as a agent reasoning graph agentic network.
Yeah, and next iteration of GNNs, and quite a thought through one. What did you think about this, Adam?
This is optional for an AI leader. It's an interesting development, and so a graph neural network, which is what this is about, and which they've made improvements with, is basically the information, but also the contextual information about that information, so that it's easier to search and identify the relationships between the information within the graph. So it's immensely important, and it relates to RAG as well. And we've talked about graph RAG before, and they talk here about retrieval augmented graph agentic networks, ReGANs. And so the idea is that each of those nodes within the graph is actually an agent itself. so that there's a lot more intelligence within the knowledge graph itself, which does incredible things for the efficiency of the network, as well as the outcome. So it's pretty cool stuff. Certainly an interesting advancement, definitely research, and pretty sure I'd consider it optional.
Okay. What did you think about this, Tim?
I agree. I do think this is an important upcoming area. We've been talking, and again, it's the we've been talking problem. A lot of people aren't aware of it, but the idea of adding semantics into the neural network itself, which doesn't really have semantics the way we normally think about it as human beings, I think that's the next really big improvement in these systems. And graph neural networks are one way of doing that. And this is an improvement in how to construct graph neural networks. So it's sort of, important from a theoretical sense. I think it could be a really important practical implementation of semantics into current large language models. But we're a long ways between here and there. So it's optional for now.
Okay. John, any disagreement?
Nope.
Yeah, I was on the border between optional and important for exactly the reason that Tim stated. This is an important development, giving wisdom to the neural nets, to LLMs. So it can actually elevate the LLMs quite dramatically if implemented. But yeah, there's a long way between now.
Lyd, I'm trying. I mean, I've seen where like there's a startup that effectively has a spreadsheet application, and every cell is an LLM. I think that idea of the autonomy of the nodes isn't new, but they're just sort of putting it deeper into the
they created a framework, right, and the structure that would follow.
But there's an enormous the reason I think it will take a while is because there's call it a crowding out phenomenon. There's so much to do just with the current LLMs that even if this was a real advance, nobody's going to push that hard. OpenAI and Anthropic and the leaders are just not going to push that hard because they're selling so much right now, and they still have so much adoption to get to happen within the current capabilities that they already have. They're not going to worry about the next generation for a while.
Yeah.
So unless some random startup comes along and proves themselves exponentially better.
Precisely back to the China conversation, Tim, there's going to be open source DeepSeek versions integrating this, next week.
Yeah. Then it could change things more quickly, but it's just hard to predict that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Ankash, we're going optional. Thoughts?
Optional, Luda. Optional for me as well.
Okay. All right. Optional it is. Let's proceed.
Okay, the next one or the last one that we have for today comes from AWS, and they have introduced an Amazon Bedrock Agent Core browser tool.
Yeah, the name could be much better. What did you think about it, Tim?
Yeah, I'll channel my inner John and say, boy, these folks need some help in marketing for sure and naming. But it's interesting. I would probably give this an important because it's AWS and they're so important in the marketplace. Normally, I would give something like this an optional. It's interesting, but it's a product announcement and it's not even a new thing. This is sort of a little bit now. It's sort of a new thing, but this idea of embedding virtual browsers, I think, is going to become more and more common. I'm surprised people haven't done it before because the idea of giving your AI a virtual machine, if you will, in the cloud that can be a browser so you can start to do browser-based things without having to give it your browser seemed like an obvious idea to me, but nobody had done it until, I guess, Perplexity kind of started doing it. So I think this is going to become very common very quickly and makes a lot of sense because you can isolate the browser, you can let it do whatever it wants, can have its own session. I don't want to get too technical, but it makes a lot of sense. It's Amazon, so I give it an important because I think they're the first of the hyperscalers that I'm aware of to announce this, but I would be surprised if it wasn't pretty widely available pretty quickly. Because this idea of being able to do things on the computer is a good one.
Right.
On the browser, being able to actually go into a web page and do things.
and it's secure. So they're essentially putting
another advantage of being in the cloud. Now, of course, it's in the cloud, so then we get into all the arguments about, well, it's not yours and it's not on-prem, and you have all those other issues. But people use AWS all the time and for lots of secure stuff. So I think that's another thing that makes it more comforting for most enterprises is, oh yeah, I know how to do these things with AWS.
Yeah. Okay, so important from Tim. What did you think about this, John?
Yeah, it was more in the optional category, but I could live with important.
Okay. Ankash?
Important for me, Luda, for all the things that Tim mentioned.
And Adam?
Yeah, Tim, also ChatGPT agent can use its own browser, and you can give it tasks and literally turn off your computer. So it's definitely operating its own browser. What this does really, though, is they're the first ones, as you said, the hyperscalers, and to give you the opportunity to do that at scale. Again, it'll probably come back to whether you're an AWS shop. all of my Azure customers this is not much help to them, other than to maybe push Microsoft to give them a complementary technology. But it is an important step forward, so I could support that.
Okay, so going important, Paul. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just want to note though, I mean, this is another indication on the verticalization of these stacks. You know, I think so. If we look at where the browsers, I mean, all the innovation going on in the browser, and just move that forward 3 or 4 years here, you know, you can see even more lock-in and tightness and interaction between agents, browsers, and the Microsoft stack versus the AWS stack versus the Google stack here. So it's really, anyway, I think this verticalization is a very major trend in AI that hasn't been the trend for the last 3 years, but important's fine for this article.
Yeah, so Ankash, maybe you scroll to almost the bottom where there is a schematic, and the browser is put under the into the wrapper of execution environment in the security.
Let me add also, because in the research and comparing this to ChatGPT agent, I did also look at the new Copilot in the Edge browser from Microsoft, but that you absolutely need your Edge browser open for it to continue to operate.
Right.
So it's not the agent actually operating a separate browser. And it's also different than spinning up a virtual environment, doing something like Puppeteer as a headless browser. So this is actually a virtual environment where the browser is running, that the agent's owning and controlling in the cloud.
Yeah. So all of this work, right, is to create that environment in which you put the browser, operate it safely, and it's at scale. So the schematic holds, even though it's AWS, but it can be implemented in other places. So this is, okay. So going important. All right, that's Ankash, as you prepare the scorecard, we have a minute or two to talk about news. Paul, John, Adam?
I've got nothing new.
We're rolling out a buyer's guide. We had a good discussion last night at the Learning Lab for it, and really get some good feedback on it. And it's amazing all the changes.
That's good. And we have a conference coming up, as you all know. Please join. We still have a couple of tickets left, right, Paul?
We have tickets left, and interestingly, we now have 5 companies. There's a lot of noise there. 5 companies that have bought tables. So this whole notion of people bringing an entire team to accelerate the learning of the team, to accelerate the alignment of the team, and accelerate the team's planning for 2026, both for roadmap and budgeting, is a really important trend, and it's very exciting and something we're continuing leading even more into. So if you're considering bringing a team, please do it. You're going to be right in the middle of the main room, and we're going to celebrate the companies that bring teams.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. So we have for today one essential, China-US war in AI, one important, and the rest are optional. So thank you all very much. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you tomorrow.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.